What's up, guys? This is Justin from the I Believe in Humans podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. This show is made possible with the generous donations from patrons like yourself supporting us over at Patreon. So head on over to Patreon, check out the different membership levels we have, subscribe, and take advantage of all the extra cool bonus content that we'll be throwing your way that is exclusive to Patreon members only. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate the support. We'll see you next time.
It's one small step for man.
Welcome to Earth.
One giant leap for mankind.
What's up, man? It's lit.
UFOs are real.
Wow, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the I Believe in Humans podcast, episode 4. I'm your host, Justin Tandy, and to my right is Mr. Dustin Heyer. How are we doing today, brother?
I am doing wonderful, man. I had my daughter all weekend. We hit the lake.
Nice.
Hit the lake with her and the dog. It was a lot of fun.
You had a busy weekend, my friend. And
It
first,
was, yeah.
shout out to Tomas. I love what you've done with the intro, Tomas. I got to just say, I'm pretty hyped on that.
Thank you very much.
What's up, fam? It's lit.
We've been busy. You can tell we've been
He's
under
got some
construction.
samples.
We got our producer is going crazy with the sound effects over there. And Dustin, it looks like you've been busy too. You've got some new threads on there. What kind
yeah,
of,
man.
Who are you wearing?
I can't pronounce the name. It's hard. It's very expensive. No, my mom bought it for me. It's one of the most comfortable shirts I own actually now. Yeah, thanks, Mom.
Wow, your mom bought it for you.
Yeah.
Linda up in the house. All right, thank you, Linda. Right? No, it looks great. It's actually a pretty cool shirt, and
Yeah, it's got little planets and a little astronaut on it. Like I said, it's
Yeah.
very breathable. It's very comfortable.
wow. We gotta. If you can't pronounce the name, you know it's good. Right?
Exactly
It's got to be
right.
quality, right?
Yeah.
So today, guys, what we're going to be talking about is eyewitness testimony, right? When it comes to UFOs and encounters and stuff, but more specifically, the stigma that surrounds eyewitness testimony. And we're going to kind of walk through some of the past, the present, and take a peek at the future, if you will, right? And Dustin, like I said, I know that you were incredibly busy when you weren't watching your daughter and hanging out at the lake enjoying the beautiful weather. You were digging deep into this stuff. You were like super fired up about this topic, and you did a lot of heavy lifting on this, didn't you?
I guess you could say that. I mean, this topic in general is just intriguing to me. Eyewitness event. I haven't had one of those. I know you
Right.
haven't had one of those. Tomas has
I
one
have
of those.
not.
A lot of people have had an eyewitness event, and it's hard to believe people because you can't believe it until you've witnessed it. That's the whole
Right.
thing, all right?
That's a great
Wouldn't you
point.
not
And so-
agree?
I do agree. And you know, kind of where I sit with eyewitness testimony and kind of where we'll get into is I'm on the fence with it. But here's sort of the question that I'll pose to all the listeners and stuff here is when it comes to eyewitness testimony, my personal belief and sort of how I feel about this subject is you can't have your cake and eat it too. And what I mean by that is, at least in America, and I'm speaking as only an American because it's the American criminal justice system is all I know. But in the American criminal justice system, we place a very high price on eyewitness testimony.
Right,
So
yeah.
high, in fact, that we're convicting like high crime offenses like murder and like mob bosses and all these people to like life in prison and sometimes even the death penalty. And sometimes all these lawyers have is just eyewitness testimony. So if it's good enough to put someone in jail for the rest of their life, how come when it comes to something like UFOs, alien abductions, paranormal, fringy considered things.
That's just crazy talk. That's just
Crazy talk.
Yeah.
Everybody's insane. We have to like cast them aside. We have to poke holes in their story. If they're not completely like 100% about every little minute detail, it just it spoils the whole bunch. It spoils the whole story, right? And we're going to get into like why, like some of the psychology and some of the science on that. But before I get too far, that's where we're getting into. Why don't we take a look back before we get to where we're at now? And why don't you tell us where this sort of stemmed from, Dustin?
Yeah, I feel it all started here at Project Blue Book. If you haven't heard about Project Blue Book, I'm going to give you a little history lesson if you guys want to just bear with me here for a minute. Project Blue Book was a series of systematic studies of unidentified flying saucers conducted by the United States Air Force starting in 1952 and ending in 1969. Project Blue Book, originally led by Captain Edward Ruppelt. I'm sorry, Captain, if I brutally murdered your name there, but Ruppelt was actually named Project Blue Book after the blue booklets used for testing at some colleges and universities, and it inspired him by how much attention it was getting from the high-ranking officials over there, as if they were studying UFOs was as important as a college exam. I thought that was pretty cool. He also coined the phrase UFO.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really cool. I thought it was really cool. Makes it more neutral and accurate to what they're trying to describe there. But Ruppelt over there at Project Blue Book streamlined in the manner in which UFOs were reported by the military officials in hopes of alleviating the stigma and ridicule associated with UFO witnesses. And he developed a questionnaire for UFO witnesses to better collect that data. That's pretty cool, man. I mean, I don't know how good those questionnaires were, but
yeah. Well, no, you bring up a good point. I mean, if I can hear the skeptic in me already looking back on this, because I know a little bit about this, right? So you got to imagine, guys, we're setting the tone here, right? And there was what were the precursors to Project Blue Book? And give me some of the timelines you looked at. It was like two other things.
Yeah, before Project Blue Book, it was Project Sign, which I believe was 1947, and it was Project Grudge. Right after that was 1949. Sign was conducting these studies and these researches, and then Grudge is kind of trying to debunk that because, once the government gets involved and the public gets involved, they got, it's a little touch and go.
Right. Yeah, and then you've got Project Blue Book, which was 1952.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Correct.
You guys, when we're looking back at this stuff, you got to realize that other than unless you're pulling a little green man out of the trunk of your car and you're providing some sort of smoking gun, right? This is primarily being their research and their data is primarily going to be eyewitness testimony, right? Whether it's military or non-military, it's there's no one that just has like a retrieved craft in their backyard, right? That would have been highly, highly classified. So all we really know is that they must have been compiling a ton of data and a ton of eyewitness testimony.
Yeah, especially back then. I mean, with the technology, it was all based off of eyewitness.
There's no cell phone cameras back there, right? and the other thing is about the pamphlets and stuff is like, I can hear the skeptics and stuff saying, it's a misinformation, right? It should be a shock to nobody that listens to this or anywhere that the United States government and intelligence agencies, dabbles in misinformation. We've used it to topple governments and rig elections across the country, right? So, of course, why wouldn't they rig the systems, right? Anyone that's applied for a job recently, most big corporations make you take a questionnaire and a personality test, and there are these loaded questions, and you're have this anxiety of what's the right answer, right? Yeah. They could easily be swaying people via these little blue book pamphlets. So yeah, you're right to question that. I mean, that's Absolutely. Kind of where I'm at too. So
I mean, at first they took these studies very seriously. They even had a Project Blue Book official, quote unquote, at every single Air Force base to collect this data and forward all the information to Ruppelt. Then in the summer of 1952, between June and July, there were hundreds of sightings, both visual and caught on radar near the National Airport in Washington, D.C. And this caught the eye of the public, and it caught the attention of the CIA, who then formed a panel of scientists called the Robertson Panel, being led by, obviously, Dr. H.P. Robertson. They essentially concluded that it wasn't worth their time or money, recommending that the Air Force start a debunking campaign to lessen the public interest, using mass media to do so through things like Walt Disney and even celebrities to kind of ridicule the phenomena, basically recommending controlling public opinion through a program of propaganda and spying. And that's pretty wild, man. I mean, that's exactly what happened,
Right. So I mean, it's like a detective setting out to solve a crime that he's already predetermined the conclusion to. Yeah. So any evidence that you may come across to point to the contrary, you ignore, and any evidence that you may look at you're going to be looking at with some sort of bias, right? Some sort of confirmation bias. Like everything you see is just going to reaffirm, oh, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. So it sounds to me, what you just read, what it sounds like to me is there's someone behind the scenes, and not to get too conspiracy, but someone just didn't want to pay for this, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not UFOs and aliens they're trying to hide, which could, allegedly.
I mean, yeah, they probably were, yeah.
But for the most part, it sounds like they're like, I just want to shut this down, and I don't want people, asking questions about this money. So let's throw out Mr. Robertson, go out there, shut this thing down, make the public feel happy, and let's put a bow on this thing, right?
Yeah,
that's what it sounds like to me. Is that what you got from it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the media controls a lot of stuff, and the publicity is a big thing. So if you can control what they're seeing, you can control a lot of things.
Yeah, dude.
But I mean, it's kind of different now. It's kind of interesting that now these things are hitting our media that, hey, this stuff is real. When back then, I mean, they were getting frustrated that there was no progress made from these studies. For at least, I think it was like 20 years or something, they were getting no scientific research out of this.
Right.
So following some U.S. congressional hearings, the Air Force finally teamed up with the scientific community and created the Condon Committee, led by Edward U. Condon. The committee was mired with controversy after the Condon report suggested that even though the current scientific knowledge could not account for a large portion of the data, they concluded nothing of interest could come from UFO research. Like, that's freaking crazy. Like, this technology is insane. It's then it was considered
game-changing technology.
Exactly.
Right?
So
you're talking anti-gravity propulsion and all this stuff, and they're basically saying nothing to see here. Go about your merry business.
Exactly.
Right. And, part of the thing is that I'm thinking when you're bringing this up is I just was watching like, I think it was like on the History Channel or something. And I got to go back and look this up. But it was H.G. Wells, I believe. He did a radio broadcast for about an hour or so. And it was, he basically fooled the public in like New Jersey, New York area into thinking there was, it was the War of the Worlds.
Oh, people went crazy, man.
And there was like 1.4 million people like were going crazy, calling in. What are we doing? Locked and loaded out in the streets.
Yeah.
And there was this like mayhem, and it took like over an hour before they finally announced that it was just a television program. And what it sounds like to me is some smarty pants out there probably saw that and was like, whoa, like we're totally prone to hysteria when it comes to this topic. Better keep a tight lid on that, right?
Could you imagine nowadays if that happened? Like if you're tuning in as like emergency report and then just it's fake, or like you're watching TV and Anonymous like takes over just hacks your television network and then comes in
with the Guy Fawkes mask, like remember the 5th of November V for Vendetta style?
It'd be absolute chaos, man.
Dude, it would be kind of cool though. It would. I mean, I half expect it in 2020 at this point. We still got. Oh, dude, I'm already in my basement. Of course, I'm prepped.
Are you prepped? Are you a prepper? Do you have all the beans and Twinkies and all?
I got cans. I got beans for days, bro. All right. So no, I think those programs are very interesting. I know that the Air Force took a big hit, like you said. They kind of had a black eye, which is why I've heard like Luis Elizondo from To the Stars Academy been asked this because he worked for ATIP, which was an Air Force program. Why isn't the Air Force out there, like you said, with these videos that have been released in this disclosure movement we feel like we're sort of on the precipice of? And his response was he thinks that the Air Force is still sort of reeling from these Project Blue Book days in terms of it was a big stain on
100%. I mean, it was a failure.
Reputation.
It was a failure to the scientific process and a major setback in the political struggle to integrate ufology into the mainstream science. I mean, they completely botched that report, and it set ufology back decades, man. Like, it's hard to come by. I mean, we're getting there with what TTSA is doing. We're bringing it back, and it also warns us of the unintended consequences of drawing government into the science of UFOs, but I think that might be what people are a little worried about with what TTSA is doing, with those government contracts. But hopefully, they're really digging in and discovering some stuff finally. I mean,
well, I can see where the stigma is coming from, right?
Absolutely.
Because when you have a 20-year program going on that is being funded by taxpayer money, and they're basically coming out and saying, we interviewed, what'd you say, 25,000 people they interviewed over the course of this program?
Yeah, at least over 25,000 reports. The thing is, with the Condon report, they only referred to about 140 sightings, despite having access to all those reports. And nearly half of those cases were just from the year 1967, and most of them weren't even genuine, and a lot of them were uninteresting. So it did feel like a smear campaign. They're just trying to debunk it, and that's what I feel created the stigma. It's the ridicule people that are talking about this, and it's just like, throw this under the rug. They ended up, after that, in 1967, they ended up just terminating the project.
Right. And so to kind of like give you guys sort of a perspective on this is not only I can see where the stigma is coming from in terms of feeling like this is just like a lost cause after a while. But also when you're interviewing 25,000 people, and like I said, if you already sort of have a preconceived notion of what you're after, the information after, I'm gonna blow your mind a little bit here, right? So I did a little bit of research about how sort of there's not a lot of information, as you know, about how the military collects. I did not serve in the military, right? Like in terms of how they go about collecting intelligence, a lot of it remains classified in how they do this. So you got to look at law enforcement. So that's the only thing I could sort of look up is the criminal justice system, like I said earlier. And what I found is for the last 70 years, they were sort of incorporating this thing called the Reed technique. So bear with me. In layman's terms, this technique is basically the good cop, bad cop. Okay? So when you're interrogating someone or you're investigating someone, you start with like empathy and sympathy, and like you're trying to minimize the effects of the crime and the severity. It's no big deal. It's no big deal, right? But you maximize the assertion that they are guilty, right? Everything there is to know, and it's just no big deal. You might as well come clean because we're going to figure it out, and we've already sort of condemned you to begin with. And it elicited a lot of like false confessions and stuff like that. So imagine if that's what they do to people suspected of crimes. So let's say you're a person that's not suspected of a crime, and you're being interviewed with some of these sort of Reed technique tactics where there's an assertion that you're either withholding information, or you could be part of it, or right. Anyway, you could corroborate. Like if you're not going along with what they want, basically what I'm saying is they have tactics where they can persuade you either to go along with what they're saying, or at the very least they can divert you away from what you're trying to state is factually true. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And it messes some people up, especially if you have a low IQ. They can really get those false confessions out of you. And I think that's why this UFO community focuses so much on credible witnesses, credible military witnesses, because that's not gonna work on them.
Well, I want to just correct that real quick. I don't want to say that all people that make false confessions are low IQ. I just want to correct that, because what they're saying is the majority, like this tactic is under fire, and I don't know if it's still being used as much today. Anyway, I found an article from like 2017 that said they were moving away from it. So if there's anybody who's in law enforcement and they're like, "What the hell is this guy talking about?" Look, I'm just doing research here. I'm not actually a police officer.
They're waterboarding.
Right, but there's like these things, there's these tactics that we know are being employed, like you're not supposed to torture, but you can waterboard, and you can do this, and you can do that. You're exactly right. I love that you said that, because it's the same thing of, why don't we torture? Like, we should just, torture them, then they'll give us the truth. No, you'll literally say anything to stop the torture. So the information is bad. And that's the fundamental premise of what I'm getting at here, is when the military is running investigations, and they're like, basically, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. Yeah. So you're going out and you're interviewing Farmer John, whose cattle got mutilated, and says he saw a flying saucer and little green men walking around, and you think it's a bunch of bullshit. Don't you think like you're going to go out there and interview a guy so in a manner and in a fashion that you can get that case closed as fast as possible?
Depends on your agenda. Depends on your agenda, man. Like,
and then once you write that report and submit it to your superiors, that's all they got.
Yeah.
Right. So again, this brings me back to something we said in earlier episodes, which is I'm not necessarily someone who believes in a ton of conspiracy theories. I believe in the fundamental flaws of human beings, which are, we can be lazy, we can be prideful, we can be stubborn, right? Like, I just imagine some guy, like you said, the Project Blue Book guy that's supposed to be like stationed at every base, and he's your go-to guy. If you see an alien, go talk to that guy.
Know? Like, how many
Could you
Air Force
imagine?
bases do we have? You know?
Exactly, dude. That's a ton of guys.
Yeah.
There's no way there was that many people in that program, right? Could you
Yeah.
imagine enlisting in the military and it's like, all right, man, you know, I'm a fighter pilot. I'm an infantryman. What are you? I'm the UFO guy in the corner. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, it's similar
that's
to
a tough
nowadays.
job.
Like for me in my industry, every I'm an independent filmmaker. Every set you're on now has a COVID professional that's going to take your temperature, and they're the ones that like you have to get through to be like, yeah, he doesn't have it. You don't know. You never know who you're going to get. How many productions are going on now that.
Yeah.
You know, there's got to be thousands and thousands of these dudes, and they're just doing their job. You know, they're doing their thing, but no one's perfect. We're all human.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying is I think a lot of this comes from. That's why I'm glad you did this research and kind of we took a look back because, like I said, there's a lot of this stuff. Like we hang our hat on eyewitness testimony as human beings. We imagine the way we think about eyewitness testimony is we think it works like a camcorder.
Yeah.
Right? Like you think if I see something and I come at you and I'm like passionate and I'm like, Dustin, you'll never believe what I saw. It happened like this and it was like this color car and it was this and this and this. You're going to start to believe me.
Absolutely.
Because I'm convicted and I'm passionate.
You give me that conviction, I'm going to believe you.
Right. But there's literally something called the forgetting curve. And I'm going to probably butcher this guy's name, but you're reading, you know, Ebbinghaus. Famous neurophysicist or neuroscientist, psychologist, right? I'm reading all these articles about this stuff, so it's all blurring together in my head. But long story short, the forgetting curve is basically, it's basically that human beings will forget 50% of the information 1 hour after they've learned it, right?
Oh, wow.
And 50% of what you learn after it's encoded is the word, right? So the
it makes sense, yeah.
So if I tell you something, right? After we stop doing this episode, an hour from this episode, you're going to forget half of what we talked about.
Probably. I have a better long-term memory than I do a short-term memory.
Right.
I'll tell you that.
Well, that's a good question. That's a good point. The long-term memory, the reason you have a good long-term memory is because
manipulated, right?
Well, no, human beings learn via repetition. So your long-term memory is basically muscle memory. Okay. So most of the things you're learning, like you remember your mother because how many times have you been around your mom and you saw her face and it's just repetition. Those are all your long-term memories and like values are based on repetition. It's just like school. When you cram for a test, you can take the test like right before and then after you walk out of the test, don't you just like turn into a blank slate?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Right? But if you're studying a subject like film, something you're really passionate and into, you read the book.
It soaks in.
You do the homework.
Part of you, yeah.
You practice it. You practice it until you're good. That's why they say it takes 10,000 hours to make a master, right?
Man, I can't tell you how much stuff I lost in my education throughout high school and elementary. That's just gone into the ether, you know. But
we're from California. I think I have a fair idea of what assisted in the memory loss there for you.
I know. My mom's
right.
listening.
If we're not all in naked mud pits at Blink-182 concerts, right? So, all right. So we've got Project Blue Book. They're investigating 25,000 eyewitnesses, but mostly they're out to debunk stuff, right? We've got that. So we're just keep trucking on forward. So where do we go from there?
Well, I mean, after Project Blue Book was terminated, the UFO community then became dominated by the independent groups such as like MUFON. MUFON stands for Mutual UFO Network. It's a nonprofit dedicated to the study of UFOs, completely ran by volunteers. It's the largest and longest running civilian investigation and research organization. They've compiled a ton of eyewitness events. I mean, that's the majority of their research. It's really cool when you go to their website, MUFON.com. It's MUFON. There's a video, the top video when you go into video testimonies is Jesse Marcel. And Jesse Marcel was the dude photographed holding the quote-unquote weather balloon in the Roswell investigations, all the newspapers that came out after that. And he said he discovered and found metal there that he's never seen before. I mean, his testimony video on MUFON's website, he's claiming that it was not a weather balloon. and
Right.
that he was not allowed to talk about it. That it was absolutely an aircraft, and it was in his opinion that it was not of this world. But I mean, how much is that of like what I learned from you just now about your research and memory is, does he remember it correctly? It's like, did he experience those things, or like was his opinion influenced by mass media? Because
Right.
mass media was saying that was a UFO. What the heck was that? I mean, I truly I believe the dude. I mean, you guys can go watch the
Right.
video for yourself. Maybe we can
Right.
link that on our website or on our Instagram or something. But what do you think?
So there's a couple things there, which is one, MUFON is awesome. There's a Netflix documentary series. I don't think it was originally on Netflix, but it's on Netflix now, and I know I shout out Netflix all the time.
I love Netflix.
It's called
It's all good.
Hangar.
No,
Hangar
that's
One.
on. I think that's on Hulu. That's not Netflix. That's Hulu.
Well, I saw it on Netflix, so
Okay.
check out Netflix
Okay.
or Hulu.
It's on Hulu now.
But it's MUFON, and it's about what you're saying.
Yeah.
They're super old school, so they have literally like, you're talking like carbon copies, guys. You're talking about like the white, the yellow, and the pink copies, right? Let me take your eyewitness testimony. Here's a pink receipt, right? And I'm going to go file this in a cardboard box. Super old school, right? So we're hopefully they're moving. That's what like Tom DeLonge and the whole vault thing is trying to digitize that. So anyway, MUFON is awesome, and like you said, it's just like a funnel of anything and everything to do with this stuff, eyewitness testimony, materials, and all that stuff. So I love that, but basically the what's his name again? Jesse
Marcel. I'm probably brutally.
You're fine.
Running that
So
name
the story is he goes on. Someone tells him it's a flying saucer. He tells the reporter. 3 days later, they retract the story, and that's the famous like the headline about the weather balloon, and the poor guy has to go out there and hold this like random debris.
Yeah.
But the story behind that is it was said that the real ships and material and recovered stuff was actually put on a train and shipped out to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio.
There was a ton of it too. I mean, that wasn't a
right. You're talking. It was like 2 or 3 crafts, or something like that, or
2 or 3
maybe
crafts.
not 2 or 3. No, not 2 or 3. Sorry, it was 2 or 3
stuff.
2 or 3 like zones
Bodies?
because it came down and
it
it
was
skipped.
alien bodies. There's 2 or 3 alien.
There might have been bodies. All right, you're the alien guy, whatever, dude.
I
But
buy
it comes
into that
down, supposedly skips. So there's like 2 or 3 sites, is what I was saying.
Okay, there
is
we
what
go.
I meant to say. Sorry,
All right.
I didn't mean. I don't
No,
want
you're good.
people calling me out.
It was
You're
2 or 3
not.
bodies.
You're not legit. There was
It was 2 or
could be
3
2
bodies.
Anyway. The other cool part of that story, and what's interesting is, I can't remember if it was that episode or if it's MUFON that was checking this out, but in that picture you're talking about, people have actually looked. He's holding like an index card in his hand, and people actually were able to kind of zoom in and try to see. Yeah, like this is like the computers are inside the file. All right, whatever.
Oh, there we go. There's a
there
picture.
it is,
Thanks,
Tomas.
Yeah.
So it's in his hand, and people you can kind of like make out the title, and basically it says something to the effect of like, hey, urgent like telegram. Again, before cell phone cameras and text messaging, guys, he's getting like telegrams or whatever the military's using back then. Go out there, rescind this story real quick. There's a big shot, like 4-star general dude coming out to sort of kick some ass down there. And that guy ends up going on to become the head of like, I think he ends up becoming the Secretary of State, the big guy, the big shot that comes out to kind of put this thing to bed. Yeah, he worked for was it President Harry? I believe this is during Harry Truman's era. So Truman ends up making him like look up that guy. That guy has a really weird ending. He starts to go a little crazy because of the stuff he knows, and he mysteriously walks out of like a 9th floor window on his own volition. Just decides, I'm going to commit suicide.
I did not know
one day.
any of this, really.
Yeah, after he starts going quote unquote crazy and telling people he's going to tell everyone the truth about the secrets he knows.
Holy shit! Yeah, no
and
idea.
he mysteriously walks out of a 9th floor.
I'm digging into this
out of hospital.
As soon as this episode's
Ooh,
over.
just gave you some bedtime
I'm
material. There you
excited.
go. There you go, dude. Tomas is on his game.
Attaboy.
All right, so guys, if you're listening right now, basically you need to check out the YouTube channel. Tomas is pulling up all the different screens. He's pulling up the information as we're talking about this. So if you want to know what we're talking about, just go over to the YouTube channel, check this episode out. So anyway, there we go. I totally believe the story. I believe that he was unfortunately, I think he was a fall guy. I think
100%.
he's small time, Roswell, New Mexico. You know, not a whole lot going on out there. Right, get that guy to go out there and just when you're saying mass media, people think like mass media, like CNN, Fox News, and all this stuff.
Yeah, it was so
right?
much different back then.
You're talking about the local newspaper, right?
That's how they're able to suppress it, dude.
Yeah, you can suppress it immediately because it's one guy. And when he runs a story for 3 days, guys, you got to realize that like people in New York City weren't hearing about this immediately. So if you can cut it off before it gets out to the East Coast, literally they're shipping the paper out there or whatever.
Yeah.
You can get out in front of it. It's not like Twitter generation where as soon as it happens, it's already uploaded on the internet, and there's nothing anyone can suppress, right? Like the internet never dies. So this is a big different era that we're getting into, and just another.
That's what makes it so compelling to me is because this dude comes out years later and tells us, it wasn't a weather balloon, it was a craft, and I witnessed it. I held the materials in my hand. That's compelling to me. That's like straight up, okay, our government lied to us. That's not just a conspiracy. These are hard facts. This is evidence right here. You know? And that's all on an eyewitness, technically. I mean, he's not giving us the materials.
No, but it further sort of illuminates the fact of how much stigmatization is around this subject, that these quote unquote deathbed confessions, which essentially sounds like this guy was, right? You're retired, you got nothing to lose. That's why that guy mysteriously walked out a window, right? There's a lot of like mysterious
Was it
deaths.
that dude or the dude that came in and said,
I can't remember his
name
or
whatever.
Yeah, maybe Tomas can Google it. I'll give you the name
I'm gonna look it
at
up.
the end of the episode.
I'm going to find out.
He's a big shot.
Okay.
He comes in, Truman sends him out to suppress this. He's a big shot. He ends up becoming like the Secretary of State, but he puts together sort of this intelligence group or committee that is basically attributed or has been attributed to sort of the birth of the cover-up. So Roswell and the amount of public interest that it garnered, this guy was the kind of the father or one of the four founding fathers of the cover-up, so to speak.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
Okay, so when you're looking that up, like I said before, maybe before this episode's over, Tomas will at least give us his name. I can't remember his name right now, and I feel terrible because I can hear people groaning right now, being like, "This guy thinks he can talk on a show about UFOs. He doesn't remember his name." Anyway,
no, you're good. You're good. Another interesting story that MUFON has in their archives that I thought was interesting is the Harry Turner abduction. And, not all
love that name, by the way.
Not all UFO experiences are limited to lights in the sky or quote unquote flying saucers or little green men. Some of them are much more complex and are far outside the realm of possibility of even the most open-minded thinking. And the case of Harry Turner is very interesting. It took place in 1979. He was just a truck driver, and he was on the road delivering shipment just like any other day. Well, he woke up in the parking lot of his destination with no memory of his journey until he noticed his handgun beside him with an empty clip. Like he knows this handgun. This handgun is always in the same spot. Why is it empty? He doesn't remember anything that happened. And then as soon as he sees this gun, all the memories start flooding back to him, and it's he remembers a strange bright light approaching him in his truck. Now he no longer has controls of the truck; it's steering itself. He's just engulfed by this light until his door comes flying open. He starts feeling this like sensation on his shoulder, reaches for his gun, remembers unloading all 8 bullets into this light. Next thing he knows, he loses consciousness and he's awake in this parking lot. His watch said it was 11 p.m. when the warehouse clock said it was 3 a.m. And even though it was an 80-mile trip, the truck only registered 17. So it's kind of an interesting story. I mean, he's the only one that witnessed this. He's the only one that say that this happened. But when MUFON investigated it, they couldn't find the paperwork for the delivery. It was someone else already came and got it. And then when what raised some eyebrows is that he was actually a serviceman in the Navy. and they couldn't dig up any paperwork on him. They couldn't get anything. Right. But after this event is what really was starting. Strange things started happening. He started acting weird, but I mean, he believed that he had an X-ray vision, and he had these. It was just more memories came flooding back, and had no explanation for. I mean, he had these this knowledge of the star system Alpha Centauri. I don't know. I'm probably brutally murdering that as well, but it's just kind of creepy. Because many other people, alleged abductees, had made similar claims of that same part of the universe, and but I mean, at the same time, it's like he could have been crazy. Truck drivers, I mean, you're on the road for a long period of time. You can easily just miss time, just zone out, not even think about what's going on. You know,
I mean, the caffeine pills wore off.
The caffeine pills, or the methamphetamines you're fucking smoking. Like some of those some of those truckers are kind of wild, man. I mean, you're on the road for long periods of time. Right. I mean, it's hard to.
This show does not condone this.
I'm not condoning that. I'm just saying. I'm just saying how credible is that witness? You know, he's the only one that experienced that. Like maybe you know, it's kind of wild.
Well, you just stigmatized the shit out of him.
Yeah, I did.
But this is what people are going to do. So I'm glad you did that. I'm not coming down on you, but you're asking questions that unfortunately people are going to stereotype, right? This is what happens in these types of encounters. Single dude, like one point of view, right? Like we naturally sort of go to this place of like, wow, that story is so fantastical and so ridiculous over the top. That my brain just can't even accept that it's remotely true. So then I start to look for things in the person's character that might explain why he's saying the things he's saying. You just said a bunch of stuff about truck drivers and all this stuff. I know a lot of truck drivers, and I've known a lot of people whose
my
dads
grandfather was a truck driver his entire life. That was his dream.
Right.
He accomplished his goal, and he was a great guy. He didn't do drugs or anything like that. But
it's
just that's the
but
stereotype.
That stereotype
you know?
lives there
Exactly.
Right. So I know why you're saying that. But what I'm but this is what we're trying to address, right? This is what we're trying to get out in front of is like this guy's story. Look, I don't know whether it's true or not. Does he have X-ray vision? I don't know. You have to walk a mile in someone's shoes. Yeah. But the point I'm saying is it does sort of have some reminiscent characteristics. So you got to imagine like, what year was that? Did you have a year on that?
I did. It was 1979.
Okay, so here's what I'm saying. Here's sort of like the skeptic in me, right? Okay, so you watch again. Netflix redid Unsolved Mysteries, right?
Yeah, that was
And they did one of the episodes on it was about in the Berkshires here up near where I am. There was a mass UFO sighting, and it's pretty a wild. It's a pretty awesome episode. So I'd recommend everyone goes check it out. It's called like the Berkshire. Witnesses or something like that.
Netflix, if you want to sponsor us, we will plug you all day, every day.
Shooting for the moon. But the point I'm trying to make is there's a similar that in that episode. Those stories are all taking place. It was like September 1st, 1969. So the point I'm trying to make is there were similar occurrences in that story where there was like a family of four that was stopped by a bright light. They lost a bunch of time. It was like 3 hours. They woke up in the car was in a parking lot. So the last thing they remember was being in the country, but now all of a sudden they're at like a parking lot in front of a drugstore with the car running. And the only thing that tipped them off that there was something weird that happened, they had this weird gap in their memory and they had this loss of time. But the only thing that set them off was in the front seat, it was something like the mom and the grandma or something were swapped. So the grandma was in the driver's seat instead of the passenger seat, and they were like, grandma doesn't know how to drive. So something, and I get like, ooh, like little bits of information where they're like, there's no reason grandma would have been in the driver's seat or whatever because grandma never drives. Mom did the driving, right? So the reason why I bring this up is your boy Harry Turner, 1979, it's perfectly possible that he could have heard these types of stories or something, and he could have manifested some of this. Could have, okay?
Could have, potentially. I mean, I was playing devil's advocate after I told that story, you know. For
sure, for sure.
I totally believe him. Honestly, everything is impossible until it's possible. So it can sound unbelievable
But here's the thing. Let me just again, because with as far as stigmatizing people and not stigmatizing, memory is a tricky thing.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I did research about, one, how do they collect eyewitness testimony to make these assertions that we've been studying this stuff for 20 years and it's all crap. Everyone's crazy.
Yeah.
Come on, dude. Not everyone's crazy, and we're not even saying Harry Turner is crazy.
Yeah.
What I am trying to say is memory is tricky. Right? It's not a camcorder. We can remember things the way people want us to remember things by they can make subtle little comments. I can read a book and I can exaggerate things, and I can do it so many times that I start to believe it. They're like little pathological lies. But here's the point I'm trying to make is when it comes to UFO abductions and these types of stories, you know what it triggered in me is it kind of reminded me, and this is going to be a weird connection, but follow with me. It kind of reminded me of this, like the Me Too movement. Okay. Where what happened with the Me Too movement was, for a long time, women were accusing people of sexual assault stuff, and it was the he said, she said story. It's a single person's point of view going against this person denies it, right? But the thing about why it was so, I did some research, why did we not believe the victims? Why did we quote unquote victim shame, right? And here's what I found. Especially in cases involving violence or high levels of stress, which is making me think of Harry Turner, stressful, unloading 8 bullets into a bright light that's coming at you. Real traumatic memories, which can be disjointed, may sound unreliable to law enforcement personnel and to the general public, and may therefore never make it to court, right? So this is talking about like trying to convict someone. Yeah. One striking example of this is that an estimated 86% of sexual assaults are never prosecuted on the grounds that the victim's testimony does not seem to be reliable.
That's horrible.
So what they're saying is, just like we said, we made all these random assertions about truck drivers and all this stuff, and we immediately stigmatized Harry Turner, never met him a day in our life, right? We're only doing that because we're not really doing that. We're only doing that to prove a point that how easy it is to try to discredit these people. You don't know. That is a stressful ass thing that you've been put through, that you're fearing for your life, and it's going to leave a mark on you.
Yeah. 100%. Right? I couldn't even imagine if I experienced that and no one would believe me. I mean, after I experienced it, I'm already going to be thinking, shit, no one's going to believe me that this happened. I can imagine going through all that, but it'd be kind of cool to have X-ray vision, you know?
Heck yeah. So it's like, where do you go after, Harry Turner? Or, I mean, look, you got the book. We're going to do an episode later on this full one, but let's let's just sort of touch on Travis Walton, right? Yeah. Fire in the Sky.
Yeah, that's one of the most popular, I guess, important abduction stories.
Made a movie about him.
Really, yeah. I mean, they made a movie about him. There was a lot of eyewitnesses to that. It changed an entire community. It changed his entire life. Like everyone that was associated with him, his family, his best friends, they witnessed this and they saw him change. It wasn't an event that they tried to make up for popularity or for money. No, this is something that changed an entire community. And how do you not trust or believe that? You know,
it pretty much ruins your life. Like when you watch that Unsolved Mysteries, because I'm not as familiar with the Travis Walton story as you are, but I do know the Unsolved Mysteries. They're basically, there's a guy in there that's talking about the thing he's describing is being sucked up in a beam of light, just like fire in the sky, which terrified me as a child. And the thing is, he has a witness. There's a woman who's like, I saw him running in midair, getting sucked up into this light.
There was multiple witnesses, and I thought that was very interesting about that show. Is that this whole family witnessed it?
Yeah.
And they didn't tell each other about it because of that stigma. It was like, no,
because it's crazy.
Yeah.
No one's going to believe me, right? And you're in the same family. So it's like, imagine how many stories are out there like that, that we have to like pull out of people and make them feel comfortable because we have to stop victim shaming. We have to understand that there's two different types of witnesses to these things. There's victims, right? And then there's going to be like eyewitness testimony type stuff. Like, I saw this happen, and then there's going to be people like, this happened to me.
Yeah.
Right. And we need to like start listening to these people a little bit more. Like, look,
absolutely.
Some people are going to be not very trustworthy, and some people are going to be weird and stuff. But
no one's perfect.
no one's perfect, but that's up to you to be educated, to sort of use your gut and to sort of ask the tough questions and vet these people out. And the point I'm trying to make is, just because if someone can't remember what they had for lunch that day back in 1969 doesn't mean that floating, getting sucked up into a beam of light or whatever their story may be is total bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, that's a long time ago and it's super traumatic. When they're watching, the guy makes a good point. He's like, I didn't want to tell anybody about this, not because I want to keep it a secret or anything. He's like, after it happened to me, he's like, I didn't have any friends. I couldn't get a girlfriend in high school. I couldn't do any of these things that like kids normally do. And then after a while, you just stop talking about it, because how does that come up in conversation?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
it's
on
hard
a
to
job
talk.
interview, you're just like, oh, by the way, I've been abducted by an alien. Okay, we're going to move on.
Yeah. I mean, I can even imagine. It's hard for me to have these conversations with my friends because I believe in this topic. I believe in this phenomena. And just having that conversation with like-minded people, it's hard to find. And so when I do, it's like, all right, you're going to get an earful now. I hope you're ready to have a night. But
I know
it's not something you can easily talk about. But it's cool that nowadays it's not as taboo as it once was. So I'm hoping more and more people can come out and
slowly but surely.
Yeah, bring us your stories. And it actually reminds me of, I had an interview earlier this week with my friend Randy. I wanted to show you, JT.
This.
Yes, I had an interview with my friend Randy. He had a couple sightings, and I wanted to talk to him about it. So, Tomas, actually, do you want to cue that up and we can show JT, see what JT thinks about it?
This is a present day interview with Randy.
Yeah.
That you did this weekend, correct?
I did, yes.
All right. So let's hear what Randy has to say, and then we'll break this down after. Take it away, Randy.
All right. So this is Rando, a good friend of mine. We were hanging out on the 4th of July, and I was telling him that I was starting up this podcast, and he had an interesting story for me that I wanted to share with all of you. Randy, let's just kind of dive into that. What did you experience?
All right. Well, it was around 1998-ish, 14 years old, up in Tahoe for the summer with my family. Me and a buddy of mine were hanging out. We went down to the beach at night, where not a lot of lights up there at that time. So entire skies just lit up. You could see the Milky Way. Like, we'd go out there and watch asteroids and meteors. And there was the Leonid meteor shower every year that we'd go up and watch at night. And
rad.
So we're out there and we're sitting there, and you'd see like double tails, split tails, green tails, blue tailed comets all come by, or meteors. And we just go out and watch them out on the dock. So we're just in the middle of the lake looking up, and one cuts from behind us all the way over our heads in front of us. And we both at the same time go, oh, look at that one. And it's going real slow and it's real bright. And it goes forward and then it stops, drop down. Like, didn't keep going with the horizon, dropped straight down, cut to the right, came back at us, went back to the left, and then took off straight up instead of going forward. Never seen anything move like that in my entire life. We're just sitting there just stuck on it. Both looked at each other, turned, and just sprinted off of the beach. We had like fire in the sky images coming back at us. We're
man.
Like, time to get out of here. Like, that was not a meteor. It was absolutely ridiculous.
And you were 14, so I'm assuming you weren't on mushrooms or any type of psychedelics that could have contributed to that experience.
Not even that drank alcohol yet, man.
Oh, wow.
That was number one. Second UFO that I ever saw is way more explainable.
Second. There you had another one.
Yeah.
Well, do explain.
So I grew up in Saratoga in the Bay Area. And there's a little known military base right down the road from that in Los Gatos, up on top of a hill called Mount Umunum, that was always used for radio communications during World War II and was defunded. But every time we drove up to the gate, the Jeep would show up and kick us off. So we're like, they're still doing some things there. We were in the hills one night in high school. It was about 2002. And me and my buddy Moose, who is now a second lieutenant in the Army, we're in the car driving around with one of our friends. We stopped at a viewpoint to talk, hang out, and this big old triangular shaped thing flew over us with lights underneath it, no flashing lights, and it hummed. It was just humming and flying over us. We took pictures, nothing came out, and we're just like, what the fuck was that? Like, we had no idea what was going on, what we saw, anything, but it was right from Umunum, and it flew over directly towards Moffett Field.
Oh, wow.
So we're going, that's definitely a test aircraft.
Yeah.
Like, can be explained way easily, but nothing came out about it anywhere. It's just crazy when you're looking up in the sky and you see things you don't notice. Like,
Absolutely.
You're like, that thing has never been there before, and it just changes everything.
So what do you think they were? It sounds like you had two pretty different experiences. One was kind of slow and low, had a hum. You can get a better visual of it. The other one was it just more of a light anomaly that you saw flying around?
We thought that it was a shooting star. It looked like it was that high up in the atmosphere coming, but it was moving slower. It had a more direct like tail behind it, and when it stopped moving, the tail stopped moving with it. So it was like it might have been a light going really fast and having that visual tail behind it, or some sort of propulsion, whatever was doing it. But it had the same red light no matter what happened. It wasn't like a big burst of it that happened. It either got longer or it went away.
Interesting. Yeah. I've never experienced anything like that. I keep looking up to the stars in hopes that I see something, but not quite yet. So every time I hear one of these stories, it's very intriguing to me. What do you think it was? Do you think this phenomena is man-made, or do you think it's otherworldly?
I have no idea, man.
Yeah.
The second one for sure was man-made and being tested on our soil. But it wasn't anything super special. Like, it was just an unknown test aircraft.
Yeah.
Like, that happened. So that's one thing for sure that I think there's no other way.
Yeah.
But the other one, man, I have no idea. You read all these things and hear all these things. And I was following the European disclosure that they did a while ago, where they released a whole bunch of the UFO like statements and documents. And they came up with, all the European Union scientists came up with two theories. They were like, we've seen all the evidence, like millions of eyewitness sightings on the same day throughout 15 countries in Europe. Something happened. Like, in this situation, the same thing happened. Everyone saw this happen. So there's two things. There's either some entity, government, personalized thing out there that has technology, the likes of which has never been seen, and it's the single biggest crime in humanity that it hasn't been released.
Yeah.
Or there's some other off-worldly thing coming and visiting and seeing what we're up to. And you're seeing all the things with astronauts saying that they won't release 0-point technology until we all get world peace. And you're going, I mean, if I was an alien, I'd do that stuff too, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. So like, the cases are getting strong and they're not getting strong. And you got Buzz Aldrin talking about an obelisk on a potato-shaped moon circling a planet in our solar system. And you're like, just come out and say something, man. Like,
well, have you been following the news lately the last few months on these releases of the declassified UFO videos, and the Pentagon saying they have materials and craft of a world that were made otherworldly? Like, it's pretty crazy, man. It's all starting to come out. It's
absolutely crazy, man. I hope it all does come out. I hope it comes out that the army people that wrote all their books, like, it's true that Greys have been living and working with the U.S. military for the past 25 years, and
that'd be pretty
technology is going. But it would be super cool. But in the other frame of mind, it's, hey, you've been working with them for how many years, and what have you done? Like, is Tesla working with them, or we did that on our own? And why haven't we got better than that by people that can or entities that can obviously do better things than we can? So it just doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun time to live in, though. Do you think that we're going to I don't think we'll ever get full disclosure, but you think we're going to start learning more and more these coming years?
I really hope so.
Yeah.
It's getting so hard to hide things.
It really is.
From everyone, from anyone that wants to find out any information. So if the information is out there and it exists, at some point it's going to be made to see the light of day. This is a whistleblower's dream if one exists.
Yeah.
Like, one of us, like a young generational guy, gets into a position of power finally, and they're like, here are the materials. And then the internet suddenly explodes with 5,000 different pictures and things and videos, and the guy coming out like, this is like, right? Like, this is what we're hoping. It's
I hope
someone's just, hey, I've got all this information that I've been scared to come forward with because they're going to end me, you know?
Yeah.
Like, because a lot of people couldn't handle it. The ramifications.
They couldn't. I keep on saying, if COVID taught us anything, it is if chaos hit the fan, they'd be burning down churches and buying up all the TP. So our society's not ready for something like that.
So not ready.
Yeah.
Like, it's scary that we're not too, because I mean, just the mathematics in all of the universe says that on some other planet somewhere there's a life source. Like there's definitely life someplace out there. And they're like, oh, life can't live in conditions on other planets, but we've got giant tube worms that live in 5,000 degree acid vents on the bottom of our ocean under immense pressure. You're like, things can live everywhere.
Well,
like,
on top of that, we're about to be a multi-planetary species ourselves. I mean, we're planning on going to Mars in the next few years. So why is it not crazy to think that some other civilization couldn't visit us? So I completely agree with you on that. Thank you so much, Randy. Thank you for sharing your story. And for you guys listening, please let us know what you think, if you've experienced anything, or if you believe him or not. I sure do.
All right. Awesome job, dude. Way to go.
Thanks, Rando.
I'm a Rando Calrissian coming through. I just, for everyone's, I do not know Randy, but that is the first I've ever heard of him. That was a great interview. He makes really good points. Yeah. One thing's for sure, he knows his meteors.
The blue tails, the red tails, the yellow tails.
Yeah, that was awesome. So, wow, there's a lot to unpack. I mean, that was only like a 9-10 minute interview, and he made a lot of great points. Which, I mean, I could go on forever. He might as well get his own episode at this point. But his first experience, amazing. Sort of displaying some of those TTSA, if you watch Unidentified, the 5 observables, right? He's talking about like the instantaneous acceleration and the anti-gravity, right? Very cool. And then he's also touching on the triangular craft. It's interesting that he was so very
adamant that was man-made.
That was man-made, because that's a very popular shape that a lot of people have seen. You know, the famous Phoenix lights were in a V. I mean, TTSA again, the Unidentified. Like I think it was like the 3rd episode was just on triangular craft. So interesting that he thinks that it's over a military base, because it could either to sort of play devil's advocate there, Randy, is it could have been part of the base, sure, but it also could have been investigating the base, because that's kind of what they're saying, is these things are hanging around secret bases and like nuclear facilities. So no one's going to believe it till they see it, of course. But here's the thing: Randy, he was a way more balanced. He had a way more balanced approach to his sighting than I originally anticipated. I don't, like I said, I would love to have him on here, and I would love to ask him who he is, what he does, and sort of gets it. I know that he has credibility in his story because I'm from Northern California. So I know, like, I've been to Lake Tahoe. I know that it's incredibly clear up there. There's no lights out in Tahoe at night. You can see every star in the sky. So I know what he's talking about. I know the sky. I know, like, I can put myself in his shoes. The thing is he's 14. It's 1998. It's tough. You're excited to see something like that. It's tough to remember. If you got to remember, if human beings forget 50% of what they learn, an hour later, it's hard to tell. Like, what is he actually remembering? Is he just giving us like the hyped up version, right? Is he selling it to us? Not in a malicious way, but maybe he's just misremembering it, and he's remembering it in a hyped up way because it was super exciting, whatever it was. Maybe it was explainable, maybe it was not. I'm not saying I disbelieve him. I'm just saying I can see both sides of how people approach eyewitness testimony like this. You have to be objective, right? I want to just touch on a couple of the things that he said at the back end, which is why I was like, what? Dude, this guy's awesome. So I have to agree with him, right? If these things are real and we do have this technology, if it's somehow like man-made, or even if it's been reverse engineered or we've had it, like, why don't we know about it? It is the biggest crime in humanity that we haven't had this shared with us. You know what I mean? I got to agree with him. Like, this could be game-changing technology. It could save the planet, right? We don't have to rely on fossil fuels if we can be zipping around in our anti-gravity propulsion systems. He's on to something, right? Randy for president, dude.
I'll vote for you, buddy.
So that was very good, man. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, guys, at the end of the day, you believe whatever you want to believe. Go to the YouTube channel and watch him. I mean, he doesn't waver. He's pretty clear. He's pretty concise. Like I said, like I said, eyewitness testimony is tricky, but like I said, if we're going to be putting people in prison because we believe, someone comes at us pretty hot and heavy and they remember little details like that, right? And we're going to be convicting people, then I think we have to listen. We have to slice it both ways is what I'm saying. We can't take one and then discount the other. So look, guys, Dustin, great job, man. You just absolutely destroyed this episode. You killed it. So great job. Hey, Tomas, did you ever get the name on that guy that was the Harry Truman Secretary of State, the guy that fell out the window or whatever?
So, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe his name was Lieutenant Walter Haught. Does that sound right?
That sounds familiar.
H-O-T or H-O-T-T?
H-A-U-T. He was a public relations officer at the base in 1947 and was the man who issued the original and subsequent press release after the crash on the orders of the base commander, Colonel William Blanchard.
Interesting.
Okay. So look that up, and then you'll just tug on that thread, and you'll go down the rabbit hole real quick.
Those guys dive right in. Head first,
those guys end up being sort of like the forefathers of the cover up, and they get promoted by Truman to some pretty powerful positions. So, guys, at the end of the day, this has been an awesome episode, and this is what we want to get into, man.
Yeah.
We really want to attack this stigma stuff. If we can deconstruct the stigma around this topic, just like what Randy was saying, we can invite more people to come out. And look, Randy's story was pretty mild. I know there's more people out there. Like he was saying, he was basically alluding to there's probably someone out there, the millennial version of like a Bob Lazar, right? Like imagine if we could get some more people like that, and I know they're out there, and if we can just sort of remove the stigma from the public consciousness around this topic and have people take it a little more serious and be a little more scientific, I think we can really move the needle here and get some results, which is what we all want, right?
Yes.
I'm sure you'd love to see some results, right?
I would love to see some results. Please, I encourage you all, contact us. We have a website, eyebelieveinhumanspodcast.com. Go to our contact page there. We have a voicemail you can hit up. You can email us. We want to hear your story and every little detail. We believe in you. You're not alone.
Right. So, guys, the idea is we want to hear from you because look, there's everything in between. Some people could have crazy stories. There's Randy on one side. There's Bob Lazar on the other. Look, not everybody claims to have worked on flying saucers at Area 51. We get that, right? A lot of people are placing a lot of pressure on military personnel, trained observers. That's great, but there's less of them and there's more of us. So we want to hear your stories, and we'll put it into an episode. Maybe we'll do an episode on you. We will interview you, right? If we can corroborate a lot of what you're saying, and we can get into some details, or if you just want to tell someone your story and you want it to be anonymous and you don't want to be on air at all, that's okay too. We still would love to hear from you. We just want to start an open dialogue surrounding this subject and really make it more comfortable for people to have these discussions out loud. Fair, Dustin? Did I get it right?
Nailed it.
I'm
excited.
So, as always, guys, like Dustin said, please check us out at eyebelieveinhumanspodcast.com. Check us out on the YouTube, like I've been mentioning. Where else can they find us, Dustin?
You can find us on our Instagram, Facebook at I Believe in Humans Podcast. Smash that like button.
Right. Go check us out. Subscribe. Please subscribe, rate, and review if you feel so inclined on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast fix, okay? Well, that's it for us, guys. We'll catch you next time. And just remember, guys, it's okay to believe.
You're not alone.
Peace.
What is that?
Truck driver. We love you, truck drivers.